but I also wanted to work with people who are really, I suppose you would call it the bottom of the ladder in terms of being excluded. Their experiences of consistent exclusion, be discharged from services. They themselves have a difficult relationship with care, and they have probably from a very early age. It's been a very interesting process for me in that I'm a clinician, so the people I'm working with, I don't see them as a specific research group or a study group. These are people I'm in relationship with, and it's going to be a long-term relationship, some of whom I'll be in relationship with, who knows, maybe in another few years. Also makes it quite exciting because you really have to be in there. You know, there's no room for, oh well, we've done that now, that's finished. This is long-term work. So that's the process for me with that. I suppose the process for me with that is learning what it is to be in a relationship with another human being over the long term, while at the same time hopefully encouraging them to get to know what it might be to be in a relationship with themselves. Because that's all it is. That's what moving on. Moving on is actually not so much moving on, it's moving in. And it's moving in here. So that's really what it's about. And when you're with people like that, you can't really move in here, into the physiological, as it were, the internal. You can't really move into that in conversation with another human being without you yourself being moved. You know, so it's been a wonderful process. It's a privilege, actually. It's a privilege being with people like that.
What we wanted to improve was really two things. One, to help people who were victims of crime to get more support for the issues that they need support with. To support people who are vulnerable to risk of fire, to know that they could get support from Scottish Fire and Rescue Services, and also to let colleagues know there are resources out there. So if you're working with someone and you've got a concern that that person may be at risk of fire, here's resources that you can tap into. But the bigger, wider piece of work that we were really involved with was about how do you build kinder, safer communities where people actually start to look out for each other. Before we had this funding, I was very much involved in doing a lot of client work as well, just to manage demand, to make sure that we didn't start waiting lists. So I could see all sorts of pieces of development work that I really wanted to get involved in, but I just did not have the time. The funds enabled us to buy hours to backfill the client work that I was doing and the new referral work that I was doing, which freed up my time to then go out and form those relationships. I am not needed anywhere near as much as I used to be. As a result of this funding, because elements of my post could be backfilled and I'm out and about more, I'm not as visible, so people are more confident to make the decisions themselves. And I think a catalyst is really something which goes in, makes something happen and then moves on. And for me, there are things happening now that have got their own momentum, and it's got nothing to do with me at all. And I think that's what's marvellous. That's what's marvellous. That's what's marvellous.
The project began when I was identifying a population health need, and it was clear to me from my background, professional background and experiences within the community that there were a huge amount of young people who were experiencing social and emotional well-being issues, which were impacting on their personal lives, their relationships, their ability to engage in their education and to attain and achieve and have a fulfilling quality of life. So that's where it started for me. I hope the project would help improve emotional and mental well-being for the school as a community, so not just the pupils, that would be the staff as well, and perhaps parents that are involved within that community.
This project has made a difference because there is a huge cultural change in the language of well-being, particularly mental well-being, that is used within the school by staff, by parents, and particularly by pupils. And it really dovetails beautifully with the well-being indicators, which are the outcome-driven mechanisms which we use to make sure that young people are well and that they are healthy. And we now have a rigorous annual assessment of young people's well-being and mental health under those indicators, and it just feeds into that whole language and increase in knowledge of what mental health is, the difference between a mental health disorder and what mental health means for everybody, and how it's something that is all about recovery, it's all about support, and it's just incredibly cohesive, the way that we now work, and we try and include everybody in what we're doing, and I just think there's a far better understanding of mental health and its importance in emotional health.